Salvate, citizens! Welcome back to DGS Presents. Imagine a role-playing game where Roman centurions fight a Tyrannosaurus Rex in the streets of the ancient capital, where barbarous Celts face off against Egyptian charioteers on the banks of the Nile, where you can play a Sumerian high priest, a Shaolin monk, or a Roman gladiator. Welcome to the world of man, myth, and magic.
Open the gates! Double time! Move!
Now, this game is described by its author as, there never has been a game quite like Man, Myth, and Magic. It is a simulation system which recreates the world's most savage spectacles and lets you be the star. And he continues with, by playing Man, Myth, and Magic, you'll embark on an adventure of almost hypnotic intensity, an adventure so realistic, so vivid, that the canned offerings of television pale in comparison, and even a good novel seems sometimes a little tame. Now, this RPG was written back in 1982 by gaming legend Herbie Brennan. Well, maybe it wasn't quite a legend, but he did also write Timeship for Yaquinto Publishing. Now, this particular RPG covers the time period from 4000 BC to 400 AD. And Brennan was also into alternative history and cryptozoology and all kinds of strange things, and also wrote books like this one. Secret History of Ancient Egypt, Electricity, Sonics, and the Disappearance of an Ancient Civilization. But let's take a look at this book and or this game, and let's do a little unboxing here to see what's inside the box. All right, everyone, let's do a quick unboxing of Man, Myth, and Magic. Inside this old box from Yaquinto Publishing, the first thing we see is our book one, The Basic Rules, and this is only about 24 pages long, and it's looks like it's printed on IBM Selectric, but that's okay. It's kind of old school. It's got some maps and diagrams and stuff in it, and then we have book two, which is our advanced rules, which we will discuss. Same layout. Basically, it's a little bit longer. I think it's about 45 pages. And then we have our book three, which has our adventures. Basically, there's adventure modules inside here. All kinds of things. Mythological and historical. And again, we'll talk about that in the episode. And finally, we have our maps. We have the Warren here and the Labyrinth. And there's a whole bunch of other maps for adventures, like Wilderness. And the last thing that we see there is the copious amount of character sheets that actually come with the box set. Now, the book has a kind of interesting layout, at least book one, in that it teaches you the game while you actually play it. As a lore master, you're the kind of the DM. That's what your title is, and you lead players through it, and you learn the game by doing it. And you start by basically creating a very, very basic gladiator character. So let's pull this up real quick. I kind of whittled this down a bit to make it manageable. This game is a D100 game, and it's a roll-over system, which is kind of odd, but that's the way it works. And what we want to do is we want to determine first our attributes of our gladiator. His strength, his speed, skill, endurance, intelligence, and courage. And once we roll for all of those things, we add them up and we get our life points. In this case, it's 225 life points. Now then we give our gladiator a name. In this case, let's just call him Marcus. And then we roll for our inheritance, which is also a D100 roll. And this gets our denarii, right, which is just our basic Roman coins. And then finally, we send our gladiator to training. Now, how does the training work? Well, in this book, it's kind of an introductory adventure in which you send your untrained gladiator across the countryside and through this dangerous region called the Warren, or this dangerous kind of town here, in order to get to the Gallicus, which is the gladiator training center. Now, your gladiator, when he first starts out, he's untrained, and he has a 20% chance of landing a blow, which translates into 80% chance of really missing, right? And in the in the text, it says when we roll, when we're untrained like this, we need an 81 or better to hit our enemy. Remember, it's 81 to 100 because this is 1 to 100. The numbers above those needed to hit the enemy are considered damage. So, for instance, if I rolled a 97, I would inflict 16 life points of damage. If you go below 20 life points, you fall unconscious. And we can add additional damage based on weapon. Like, for instance, if somebody hits us with a club, it's going to do the damage based on the roll plus 10. It's based on the weapons, which I'll talk more about in a little bit. Movement is generally 10 feet per round, and you have to be within 10 feet to fight the enemy. A knife or dagger, interestingly enough, inflicts half the damage roll, I suppose, because they're just, they're not as devastating as a sword or a pike or a military fork or something like that. So when we go through this area called the Warren here, which I have up on the screen, we face a number of things, basically kind of thugs in the streets, criminals, pickpockets, assassins. Inside the Warren, there's a tavern, which you can go and you can get actually into like a barroom brawl in there. There's a brothel run by this woman named Livia the Poisoner. And in book 3, there's actually kind of a mini adventure surrounding her. You can actually go into her house and there's some interesting things in there. There's a grain store, stables, an apothecary. And the apothecary is actually run by a British druid named Merlinius. There's also a gambling den. The players can gamble and challenge some brutish-looking guys to arm wrestling contests. In this case, we just compare the strength and endurance to determine who wins. It's just kind of a straight-up thing. Like I said, there's a gang inside the Warren led by this guy named Black Brutus. It's a gang of 7, and they try to rob the party. And they're armed with cudgels, right, that do that additional 10 damage. So the party or the individual, if it's just an individual going through this, has to get through that. And they also might encounter a half wolf, half mastiff that prowls the streets at night, will attack the party. It needs over a 41 to hit, so it's quite dangerous. There's a guy named Septimius who rules over the Warren as a kind of mob boss. Once the party makes it through the Warren, they head north to the Gallicus. Now, once you're in the Gallicus, you received additional training. Well, initial training, actually not additional. I haven't trained at all yet, but you get some training there. You're welcomed in, and you're sent to this thing called the Training Labyrinth. And let me pull that up. It looks like this. And there are a few things in this labyrinth that you have to contend with. Now, you do have the choice to go in as a group into the labyrinth, or you can go in individually to fight. You're going to get some additional awards if you go in individually, so I recommend it because it's going to help you with your character going forward. So inside the labyrinth, you'll have to fight a gladiator or a group of gladiators, and that's in location A there. Location B, there's a lion you have to fight. And in location C, there's a stronger gladiator or a stronger group of gladiators that you have to get through. But upon successful completion of the labyrinth, navigating traps as well, players can add 10% to their strength, speed, and endurance. Now, remember, there's also this thing called a fast strike calculation, which is based on your, let's see, where is it here? The fast strike. It is, I'm moving forward a little bit. It has to do with your initiative. And 1 second here. Oh yeah, here it is. I'm sorry. Speed plus courage equals your first strike capacity or your fast strike capacity. And that's kind of your initiative. You don't really roll for it. It's just the person that has a higher FSC gets to go first. So back to the awards that you get for getting through the labyrinth. If a player gets through solo, they add 15% to all of their attributes. And then what you do is you roll to basically improve your skill. Now, this is where the game is a little tricky here. Not tricky, but it's a little different than any other game. Once you get trained, you're going to move into what we call the advanced system within the game. And now your basic chance of failing to hit somebody is 50%, not 20% anymore. So when you can roll for skill, you can add a point of, you can lower that 50% by 1 point for every 10 points above 50. So for instance, if I roll and I get an 80, okay, I roll that the D100, I get an 80, I can lower my basic hit chance or my THN to 47. So that will help me going forward to hit somebody. If you go through the labyrinth solo, you get to roll twice for the skill. And that's important because if you roll initially for the skill and only comes out as 40, well, that's going to be bad because you're going to get a penalty, right? That's no good. You want to get well above 50 if you can. So rolling twice is going to be a big deal. Plus, you get that 15% to your attributes, not the 10%. So moving on here. Once you get your skills all figured out and everything, then you have to basically decide what kind of gladiator you want to really be. And there are a number of gladiators in the game. There is a retiarius who is unarmed and he carries a net and fork. You'll see him there in the picture. There's also a Sagittarius who's an archer. He uses a bow. There's a Thrax. This gladiator uses a small shield that deducts 10 points of damage, and he uses a gladius, which is the short sword that the Romans use. There's also a Samnite, uses a larger shield, which deducts 50 points of damage every other round. And it's explained that he can only kind of hold it up completely to block himself, but then he has to put it down in order to thrust to attack. So it's only every other round he gets that 50-point damage deduction. And he, of course, carries a gladius. And then finally, we have the Secutor, who uses a medium shield, which deducts 20 points of damage, and a helmet, which deducts 5 points. Now, once you do that, the game invites you into the games. So that's when you go like to the Roman Colosseum and all this other stuff. And there's rules for the games and some funny stuff in here because it says that you can fight under the following 3 Roman emperors: Tiberius, right, Gaius Caligula, or Nero. Now you can roll to see who you're going to be fighting under. And really the only thing that changes is your rewards. And Tiberius, as it's explained, hates the games. So the rewards will be small, but Nero loves them and even participates. He gets in there and he faces up against guys with wooden swords. Now, Caligula is just insane, so he's totally unpredictable. He might lavish you with some huge reward, or he might not even show up to the game. So we can roll a d6 to determine your gladiator's role in the games. You might be a Retiarius, you might be a Thrax, whatever. And then you also roll to determine if it's a human or animal opponent that you face. Now, winning gladiators add 10% to their attributes and skills. So really, it makes a lot of sense to compete in as many games as you can to improve your character situation. Now, the advanced rules in Book 2. There's a lot here. I'm just going to go over some of the highlights. One of the big ones is that you can die and reincarnate as a new type of character. Now, you might be a Gaul, like a Hibernian, or you could be an Egyptian. You might be, actually says at one point that it uses a very politically incorrect term, which is the opposite of Occidental for people in the Far East. You might be one of them. I won't say what that is, but there's a number of things you can become, but probably the most hilarious is that you could actually end up reincarnating as a Hibernian, and you might be literally a leprechaun.
Is that me gold?
What the hell are you?
I'm a leprechaun, me dear.
And each one of these different character types has their own special bonuses, and if they're magic users, they may use different types of magic and spells. So it matters quite a bit what type of character that you end up as, and you roll for it basically. So moving on here, combat. There is some advanced combat. So in the advanced system, like I said, the 50% rule applies. And remember to add your strength bonus and all that. But in the advanced game, you can actually have called shots. So you can say, and you're actually told to say, where you're going to hit your opponent, and that's going to modify your roll. So for instance, if I try to hit somebody in the arm, it's going to be plus 15 to my difficulty roll. Or if it's the head, it's going to be plus 30. And remember to calculate the armor damage subtraction based on the location. So if I hit somebody in the head, obviously it's the damage reduction for the helmet is going to apply. Another interesting thing in the advanced rules is endurance, and this limits how many blows you can attempt. I thought this was a really interesting facet to this game because I really hadn't seen anything like this in an RPG game. And basically how it works is we divide our endurance by 10 to determine how many blows we can inflict before we have to rest. So for instance, and we round up. So if my endurance is 53, that would be 6 blows that I can land before I have to rest for a time. You can stretch this out a bit using your courage. There's a kind of like a last ditch effort, right? In the advanced combat, you can also avoid a blow, in which you add together your skill and strength to get a total to beat. So it's going to increase the difficulty to hit you, but you lose an attack for that combat. So it's kind of basically like taking your full action as a dodge. You can run, which means you can move 10 times the normal rate, but it will exhaust 5 points of endurance, and it could exhaust you altogether. Now, in the system, we also have skills. But the skills are a bit different because you roll, they're 2d20, basically the skills, and it's roll under. So if we look at I'm going to bring up the formal character sheet here. As a matter of fact, I'll make it a little easier to see. If we look here on the character sheet, there are these optional things here like agility, charm, determination. There's drinking, how good of a drinker you are, but languages and all that stuff. Those are the skills, and those are 2d20. And those are roll under, not over. So those are optional rules that you can implement. There's all kinds of things here, like swimming and all that stuff. Now, let's see what else we have. Once you have everything figured out, your gladiator type, you have your skills, you've earned some gold. For every 1,000 gold libra you manage to accumulate, you gain something called power. Now, Libra is like gold, actually. So it's almost like gold florins, this kind of thing. And you can amass power. And power is kind of the key to the game, right? You want the purpose of life is power.
I have existed from the morning of the world, and I shall exist until the last star falls from the night. Although I have taken the form of Caius Caligula, I am all men as I am no man, and therefore I am a god.
Well, maybe not quite that much power, but you can become powerful. So, like I said, for every 1,000 gold libra you manage to accumulate, you can gain 1 point of power. Completing adventures will get you power. For every 30 power awarded, you can deduct 1 point from that 50% basic failure rate I talked about, right? So let's say I was at 47. Now I'll spend some power, maybe a 60 power, and go down to 45. 200 power amassed gives you very interesting things. It means you can choose your reincarnation. So you don't have to come back as a leprechaun, right? You can come back as something else, an Egyptian or whatever. And you may even get something called a distant memory, which will help you retrieve some of the skills you had in a previous life. This is like dual class. You might be a druidic, magic user, but you also have some gladiatorial skills because that was your previous life. Now, magic in the game uses power as a kind of currency. It's kind of like mana in a video game where you can cast spells, but it exhausts the power. And like I said, different character types have different spells that they can cast. So for instance, an Egyptian priest may cast the Pharaoh's Curse, which saps endurance and strength of a target. A Hebrew priest can actually cast something called the Angel of Death, which basically kills people. I don't even see any like option for a saving throw or anything. And of course, leprechauns can grant wishes, but that costs 200 power to do that, and they can only grant somebody else a wish. Now, in book 3 of the box set, there are some adventures on there. There is the Temple of Apollo, where the PCs are sent to investigate a druidic temple in Britain. There's the Witches of Lolag Schliege, where you're sent to Hibernia to face off against the Celts and the Druids, and then the Great Pyramid, where we actually go in to investigate the contents of the Great Pyramid. Now, the funniest one, though, is the one where there is a Tyrannosaurus Rex basically on the loose in Rome, destroying and killing people, and you have to go deal with that. So there is let me see if I can bring it up real quick here, because I forgot to add it. Here we go. Let me add there we go. So there's the pyramid map, which looks just like the pyramid of Khufu, right? And just outside Cairo, right? So you have to go in there, and there's like monsters and all kinds of things. In the book, in book 3, there's actually tables for random encounters as well, where you can encounter human beings, monsters, animals. It might be a zebra or a monkey, or it could be some mythological creature. It could be all kinds of things. So this is kind of an interesting game. It's fun. It's a bit lighthearted. The writing is kind of outrageous, because the Herbie Brennan, the author, makes all kinds of outrageous claims in the course of the books. There's a slight mistake on the back. It says it's the summer, I think, of, let's see, 41 AD. Here, let me. It's the summer of 41 AD, and it says, Caligula is on the throne. Well, actually, he was dead by then. Claudius was on the throne at that point, but that's okay, because Herbie Brennan is still awesome. He's still a legend. So if you want to have some fun and try something different, this game can be obtained in PDF form. I think it's Precis Intermedia or Precis Intermedia. Still has this game, the rights to it, so you can actually buy it from them. We don't have any affiliation with them. That's just where you can get it. I have the old box set that I got, basically decades ago. There are some modules that were released for the game, and they are in serial form. So it's kind of assumed that you're going to take the same adventuring party through different adventures, and they become increasingly crazy and more outrageous as you go. So it's kind of like the Giant series in AD&D, where you start off fighting giants and you go in the underworld, and there's Kuatoa, and you end up in the Demon Web pits, right? This is kind of a serialized adventure in this game. So that is Man, Myth, and Magic. And next week, we're going to be doing our Valentine's Day special. You're not going to want to miss that. It could get me canceled, because we're turning Michael on the loose, and he's just going to go crazy. I'm turning over the keys, so I'm sure it's going to be totally wild. Also, shout out to the guys over at TotalCon, who are running a lot of Dead Game Society games. I think they have 19 events at TotalCon a couple of weeks from now. For those of you that are going to TotalCon out in Massachusetts, you're going to have a blast, because those will be really fun games. They have all kinds of like old versions of Vampire and all kinds of things that they're playing. So, yeah, and again, like and subscribe. If you enjoy what we're doing here, we're having fun, and I will see you next time.